Here to help us break down some of the legal questions surrounding this unrest is Neama Rahmani, the president and co-founder of West Coast Trial Lawyers. So Neama, right now the big conversation that a lot of people are having is what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin regarding Jacob Blake. I think everybody at this point has seen the video. I think at this point they've heard the arguments being brought on from both sides. So I want to ask you, from a legal perspective, what are your big takeaways from this case?
Yeah, I mean, you have three big legal cases, right? The first are the protests or the riots, right? Depending on what side you're on. Then you have the civil case that will almost certainly be brought by Blake's family. And then, potential criminal case, whether the Wisconsin Department of Justice is going to file, either murder or other criminal charges against the officers involved in those shootings. So those are the three cases that we're going to be monitoring closely.
Right, and of course, just for our viewers as well, the criminal case will decide whether or not those police officers face jail time, anything of that nature. The civil case will really be looking out for Jacob Blake's family and the medical expenses that they'll be trying to pursue from this point forward, acknowledging the fact that he was shot 7 times in the back. He's paralyzed from the waist under, I believe, is the most recent report coming out of that. So there are medical expenses to go along with that as well. But I also want to focus on the event that took place just shortly after, involving the 17-year-old Rittenhouse. He is facing a situation where he's now facing first-degree murder charges. The videos that we have so far show him being pursued by 2 individuals, shooting one of them fatally and shooting another one who was at one point pointing a gun against him. So let me ask you, do you think that first-degree murder charges are plausible in this situation? Do you think that's a good case for the prosecution?
Well, the charges are appropriate, right? Because you're talking about someone who shot another individual. Now, the question is, was it self-defense, right? That's going to be the argument in the case. Self-defense will obviously mitigate any murder charge, whether first, second, manslaughter, whatever the case may be. So that's a case that's entirely about self-defense, whether the use of deadly force was appropriate in that case. But the charges are proper, at least what was filed against him, no question.
So it's acknowledging the fact that people did die in this circumstance, and then you're saying that the idea of self-defense would almost be an absolute type of defense. If he's able to prove that he was in threat by those individuals, whether it was the man charging at him in the first situation, prompting Rittenhouse to turn and then fire his gun at him, and then the second situation as well, I believe that individual hit him with a skateboard at one point, and another individual then had him at gunpoint when he was laying on the ground. I believe that's the facts as we know them right now. But when it comes to all this as well, I also want to focus on really the Blake case as well, because we talk about self-defense, and there's an instance where Blake possibly had a knife or was at least reaching for a knife at some point. Is that sufficient for the police then to say that they were acting in self-defense?
Well, same thing. Law enforcement has that same argument, right? There is the knife, whether it was found on the floorboard of the vehicle, whether it was in Blake's possession. I mean, the police union has already come out and said that Blake was making threats with the knife, that he had it in his possession. So the question is, was it reasonable for law enforcement to use deadly force to protect themselves if they believe that the threat of a knife was imminent? No question.
And I want to build on that a little bit, too, because when it comes to that defense, a lot of people are saying, well, the police, for example, should have tried to wrestle him away first, or maybe 7 bullets to the back was too much in this situation, that there were all other means where they could have tried to detain this individual. But I want to ask, what is the standard? You say reasonableness right there. Is that the standard, or a reasonable police officer, how they would interact in this type of situation? Because I know for a lot of people, it's easier said than done saying that they should have done something differently at the time, but I don't have to put my life on the line every day and protect someone who's calling for domestic abuse in that situation or calling police. So what is the reasonable person standard? Is that just how a normal policeman would act during that moment?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to go lawyer on you, but it really depends, right? Each case is unique. Each case is different. I mean, here you have an individual who I believe was tased twice by 2 officers, right? So there was an attempt to use non-deadly force. Now, does it mean that you should escalate to deadly force, particularly 7 rounds in the back? Was that going too far? I mean, that's going to be the question for both the Wisconsin Department of Justice and jurors in this case, whether it's civil or criminal. So was that escalation appropriate? And, these are difficult questions. That's why, you're going to have likely 2 cases that are going to go to a jury. Because like you said, the medical expenses for Blake are going to be through the roof. He's going to need care for the rest of his life. So there's no question that we're going to see a civil case and likely a criminal one as well.
And it's interesting because I think that this is an issue that we do need to get a more clear and concise answer to as to when police are able to respond with the use of force. I mean, I'm thinking not only about this Jacob Blake situation where he may have been reaching to his car to get a knife, but also the Rayshard Brooks situation just recently as well in Atlanta, where they did tase him once again, and he ended up running away with a taser. And of course, police pursued, shooting him in the back as well, killing him. So I think that there is a demand for a lot of people to really get an idea of what type of practices, rules the police are operating in right now, because it's a hard thing to put ourselves in that situation. So I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to this court case, not only for the outcome, but to understand how police should be acting in these situations during a time where people are calling for reforms. I think it's going to be really interesting to keep an eye on. But Neama Rahmani, I appreciate you coming on tonight, talking about the legal issues behind these. Thank you.